Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Polyhedron Collider Cast, episode 45. I'm Steve.
I'm John Cage.
And I'm Andy Lewis.
Well, a professional and well-organised tabletop gaming podcast would be talking about Gen Con at this time of year.
However,
we, on the other hand,
are not professional or well-organised in the slightest.
no indeed, especially not today. But never mind, glossing over that.
Well, no, I did actually do about 5 minutes of prep thinking we might talk about Gen Con, and I did actually look around the Board Game Geek, because Board Game Geek every year do a preview list.
Right.
So there's a big preview list for S, and they do a big one for Gen Con. And I was kind of...
Underwhelmed.
Yeah, nothing really jumped out at me and went, Steve, you must buy this game. Everything kind of went, for your viewing pleasure, Mr. Tudor, here's another game about spaceships, and here's another game about Cthulhu, and here's a man with a sword. And I kind of went, oh, right, okay. So we're not going to talk about Gen Con today because we haven't seen anything interesting. So what we will do is if anything really interesting hits us when Gen Con happens, which is in like a week, I think, from now, then we'll talk about it all excited in the next episode.
Sounds like a good plan. Although, you did mention Lovecraft a moment there ago.
Yes, I have to try and squeeze it in at least once an episode, yeah.
Well, of course, yes. It's like John mentioning Talisman or me mentioning Jamie Stegmaier. They all need their different sounds, I think. We need to get different bells.
You just hit all the alarms there.
Yes.
My desktop's lit up like a Christmas tree at this point.
Yes. A wooga, a wooga, a wooga. There's a big red button that Steve's just hitting now.
A wooga, abandoned podcast.
For basically for the benefit of everybody, we'll just bail out now. No, well, the hot topic, I suppose, of the day at the moment is the, well, frankly, ridiculous recent Simon Kickstarter.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Cthulhu Death May Die, yeah.
I'll be the badger, yes. Now, I remember you sent me a link to that a few weeks ago now, well ahead of the actual Kickstarter campaign. I mean, I think we've mentioned it in a previous podcast where one of the investigators had a pipe. We immediately went f***ing backed. However, we've both looked at it since and thought, no.
Yeah, I really like the miniatures. The miniatures they designed for it are really, really nice. Of all the...
But it does kind of look like that might be the best bit by a significant distance.
I've got to admit, what the listeners don't know is last night we all played Mansions of Madness.
We certainly did.
And I immediately went, well, I've halfway through that game, I was like, I really have no interest in this Cool When You're Not game at all now, because I've just been reminded how great Mansions of Madness is, and I'd rather just play a bit more of that, to be fair.
Damn right.
Because it's a really solid game.
Yeah.
Even when a star spawn turns up and ruins the party.
Yeah. No, I do have some issues which I've had started to creep in with FFG's Arkham games, which are slight niggles with them. It's like the last 10% of the game. So if you're playing like an hour, it's the last like 5 minutes or something, where the game is, you've already lost the game. But John's lost the game. Where you've already lost the game, but for some reason you've got to kind of play out that game to its inevitable, horrible, painful conclusion. And I think we had that last night when we were playing. It's just kind of like, we've lost now, but we might win. No, we're not. That's facts.
No, we're not. No. Everyone went batshit crazy. And the single individual that didn't go batshit crazy ended up breaking his leg. So never mind.
Which is the last time we played Eldritch Horror, we called that. And we called that, it wasn't like 5 minutes from the end. That was more like 3 hours from the end. We called that because we were doing so badly. We went, well, this is just going to spiral out of control any minute now.
Oh, wow. But yeah, it's... there's nothing really in it. I mean, the price tag alone is enough to make your eyes water.
You're talking about the Cool Mini on what game?
Yes. Death May Die. Although, to be fair, the amount of money I've spent on Mansions of Madness over the last 2 years is probably comparable.
Fairly terrifying.
Yes, it is. But at least that's been spread over a few things, and I've decided that I like Mansions of Madness to the point where I've already pre-ordered the next update, but never mind, we'll move on. But at least there's a solid game there, as Steve says. The Death May Die game doesn't really seem to have much about it other than a 2-foot miniature, which really isn't miniature territory anymore. It's more
Massive.
foyer statue.
It's a garden gnome. That's what it is.
It's a hideous, grotesque gnome.
It's just missing the fishing rod.
Yes.
Here, investigator.
It does seem a little ridiculous, though. And I think, from what I've seen, I mean, obviously Simon are looking into ways to change this, but from what I understand is that there isn't a way to play without that stupid miniature. So that's part of the game.
No, that's one mission.
Right, okay. That's all right.
That big guy is like... I think the mission, the miniature came first, and they kind of cobbled together a mission that would work with it, is what I saw. Because he's the board as well.
Oh, right.
He's the board.
Yeah, so the miniature's that big. The base of the miniature is the board for that mission.
Oh, right. Interesting.
So you don't move the miniature around, you move everyone around the miniature because it's that bloody big.
That's insane.
You can play the game perfectly without it. It's like some kind of epic finale is what he's there for.
Right, okay.
And a lot of people got their knickers in a twist about the pricing of the miniature and the limited availability as well, because it sold out within minutes.
Yeah, it is.
And then it came back up, I think it was like 100 or something like that. I don't know the exact number. And then another 100 came on available online, and they were like $20 more or something like that. I can't remember the exact figures.
Yeah, it crept up and crept up and crept up.
The price of that pledge kept going up and up and up. And I can see the reason why. The reason why is because it's a big plastic moulding, and it's made with a cheap moulding process. So you could only do a certain amount of processes with it. And so what they're going to have to do is every time they increase the number of orders, they have to make another mould, which means their budget went to crock, really.
Yeah.
And I understand exactly why they did it. I don't think they handled it in the best way, but I don't think that the vitriol that many people on the internet have sent them deserve it, because it's just, that's the limitations of the manufacturing process they've used, you know.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't know. It does seem expensive for what it is.
Well,
there's a lot. Okay, there's a lot in the box, which is fine. So you could look at it of what you're paying for. You're getting a lot for, because you're getting big, very, very nice detailed models. So for the painter, it's like, oh my god, that's amazing. But in terms of an actual board game, it's kind of an all or nothing, and I think that's the issue.
Yeah. The other Kickstarter that launched on the same day, which is one we talked about again on the last episode, was the second edition of Eclipse. A game you said you are not that interested in getting because you already own the first edition of Eclipse. And I said I'm quite interested in getting because I play Eclipse on the iPad quite a lot and I don't own a copy of it. And so, you know, second edition, brand spanking new version, tweaked rules, that kind of thing. And I have not backed this game.
What put you off in the end?
Well, just what Andy said about Coming or Not game. It was too expensive. It's about £100. I think we worked out, because me and you went through it. By the time you've added shipping, it's about £100 for the base game.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, give or take.
And there are no Kickstarter exclusives in it.
Okay.
So they've already said it's coming to retail. And they've said, on Kickstarter, it will be available cheaper than the RRP. But most shops don't sell at the RRP, do they? So,
yeah, and you won't be paying shipping at the shop either.
Yeah, they won't be paying the shipping. So
automatically you're saving £30. So the chances are, we discussed this last night, as you said, and we've come to the conclusion that it's probably going to be cheaper in the shops, which is a bit shit.
Well, it is if you're a Kickstarter backer, but it's not if you're someone who hasn't seen it.
But that's the thing. It comes back to one of the old arguments we have with Kickstarter, is that we've covered it before, so there's no point in covering it in too much detail. But it's essentially, when you back a project, you're kind of expecting to get it either faster, cheaper, or better than the shop version, essentially. And if that's not the case, as a backer, I think probably well within your rights to feel a little disgruntled.
Yeah. Because
what's the point of backing it? I mean, okay, yes, you get a project off the ground, I understand that. But in terms of buying a product, what benefit is there in you investing in the company, I suppose, is ultimately what value are you adding?
Yeah, but the argument here is this company didn't need you to back this to make it happen.
That makes it even worse.
You know, like Simon and Colossal Games are both massive companies who could have funded this game easily.
Yes. exactly.
So it is just a pre-order system at that point.
Which is kind of taking the piss a bit, really.
It is, but Kickstarter haven't stopped it.
No, which they won't. They're making money out of it. They're making 10% or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it'll be a big project, so they're not going to turn that down.
No, definitely not. Anyway, should we talk about some games we played, or should we talk about the games that John may be excited about that isn't on Kickstarter?
There are, in fact, 4 new Talisman games coming out. So, in fairness, I'm not actually as excited as you might expect about some of these.
I am curious, I think is the word.
Skeptical or...
No, curious. I don't... Right, here's what they know. Pegasus Spiel have announced they're making 4 new games set in the Talisman world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Pegasus Spiel have made some really quite good games.
They have indeed. I've recently bought Istanbul, which was bloody good value in the big box. We do like that.
One of the games they're making is an RPG. So it's 3 board games and an RPG, I think. I think it's an adventure board game, a deck builder, another board game that I can't remember, and an RPG.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a mix.
But what makes them Talisman games?
Well, looking at Talisman, the Legendary Tales, which is the first one, it's got some common artwork on the box. There you go. I can see the wizard there. There's the ogre. There's a mincy minstrel in the background.
Of course there is.
I don't know. So it'll probably have similar characters, similar baddies. I imagine there'll be opportunities to turn people into toads,
Well,
which
obviously,
is always fun.
I think that's pretty much the defining factor of Talisman, isn't it? The minstrel and the toad.
They are some of the more fun aspects of it, certainly. So the first one, Talisman Legendary Tales, centres around the Crown of Command and about brave heroes gathering together to try and deal with it, basically.
Right.
That's just Talisman, though, isn't it?
That is just Talisman, yeah. Well, there you go. That's how it's Talisman.
It is Talisman because it's Talisman.
So this is a co-op. The first one.
Oh, right. So they've twisted it on its head and made it a co-op rather than a competitive game. Okay.
Yeah.
So how does that work then? Presumably you work against the game, which is then trying to turn you into a toad rather than one of the other players.
Yeah, pretty much. You're going on an epic venture together rather than an epic adventure where there's other people also racing to get to the same talisman, ultimately.
Okay.
But this one's much more of a kid's game, this first one. So it's 8+, 1 to 6 players.
Right. Okay. Fair dues. Well, we shall see what happens. And as our man on the ground, Mr. Cage, you have been tasked now to look into it.
Speaking of kids' game, we did actually play Echidna Shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
We did, yes. I finally got you lot sat down to play it because of your curiosity.
That game is more fun than it has any right to be.
Isn't it rather good? I did tell you.
It was most enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I'm not sure I like some aspects of it.
Oh.
Ooh.
Controversial.
So, when I played this game, it seemed to be not everyone out for themselves trying to get to the target first. It was mostly everyone out to make sure that John had no chance of winning whatsoever.
And to be fair, everyone did well at that.
Yes, they did.
It's almost like your reputation precedes you, Mr. Cage, for some reason.
I don't even understand where I've got this reputation from. I'm normally such an uncompetitive, friendly, encouraging kind of player.
Of course you are. You just misunderstood, like Dr. Pepper.
That's right.
You taste bad and,
But if you try it, you might like it.
I quite like Dr. Pepper.
Oh, it's hideous stuff. No.
So I don't like Coca-Cola, though.
You quite like me, though, don't you, Steve?
I do. I do, really.
This escalated quickly.
Mostly. So the actual game, though, I thoroughly enjoyed, despite the fact that everyone was being quite cruel to me.
Good. And even though we screwed one of the rules up, but never mind.
Considering it's a kid's game, there's actually surprisingly deep strategy. Like, towards the end, most of us were spending probably a minute upwards working out how we can actually get all of our echidnas shuffled around correctly to make sure that A, we get our little bugs closer to our tree stumps, and B, and much more importantly, we make sure that everyone else is stuffed in their chance of doing the same thing.
Much more important.
And there were actually a couple of my goes towards the end when I know I could do nothing to advance myself. And if I did do the one thing to advance myself, someone else would be even more advanced towards getting into the game. So it just became, right, my entire energy is now spent stopping everyone else from winning.
And by everyone, you mean me.
It almost became a semi-co-op at that point, where everyone was sort of working against the one person who was closest to winning. Mm-hmm. And I think that did get to the point where the game kind of started to stall at that sort of player count, because we played with 5 and it can manage up to 6, and it did get to that point where the game did start to get a bit stodgy. It was still fun, don't get me wrong, but everyone was so focused on ruining everybody else that the game really didn't progress.
Yeah.
Until somebody made a mistake or didn't really get much choice.
Yes. Well, maybe that's the point, though.
That's true.
Got to the point where no one could make a choice about that. It just happened. So
yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was £17 well spent, and a damn good game. And of course, we haven't played the super duper advanced version of it on the back, which looked insane.
Yes. Because
the board's double-sided, and we played the simple version rather than the stupidly complex, oh my god, my brain's died version.
I thought that was the version we played. It only gets complex when you can tell that lots of people are trying to do lots of different things, and you want to make sure that on your go, you're not the one that screwed it up and let Amanda win, or whoever.
Yes. Who did win in the end?
Amanda.
It was Amanda, yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So in other words, we did screw it up.
We did.
Yes.
You were so focused on making sure that I didn't win. Lesser of two evils, maybe?
Potentially. We then played something else. Well, we then sort of frayed our nerves again in a much overdue game of Panda Leg.
Oh yes, Pandemic Legacy, the campaign which never ends. Do you know what's really bad about that is we got this game over 2 years ago.
Yep.
And we looked at the little date, because of course whenever you finish a game of Pandemic Legacy, you write down in the log who played and when you played it. And it's been 7 months since we last played Pandemic Legacy.
Jeez.
And that's not because we don't want to play it. We do actually really want to finish this campaign. It's just the fact that we don't get to play 3 of us at the same time that often these days, and unless it's a convention. And we don't really want to play like Pandemic Legacy at a convention.
I'll be honest, I'm getting to the point now where I actually don't want to play Pandemic Legacy, but I do want to get to the end of the campaign. I need closure on it, but every single one, it just seems so fraught. Like, we're so far from winning on every single attempt. I'm literally losing the will to live in that game.
So's the world. I mean, when we opened the board for the first time, we just looked at it and went, oh my god, what kind of mess have we left the world in?
Yes.
Most cities have fallen or rioting.
No, god, it's terrible, isn't it? We have now lost 4 games in a row. That's just dreadful.
On the plus side, because we've lost so many in a row, we should get a lot of help next time.
I don't think it's going to help. I really don't.
We'll see.
It's not really a spoiler for Pandemic Legacy, but one of the things it does is as you lose games, it gives you more bonuses of more of the bonus cards, like the special ability cards. And I actually found in a way they hindered us because they were clogging up the deck and meaning we couldn't get hold of our city cards. We needed to cure diseases.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, because we were really needing yellow cards, or rather, John was, because he was playing a character that could make use of them. And unfortunately, I think we drew something like 2 out of the deck, and I used them both in order to do something useful. But the person who could actually help us out, i.e. John's character, couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, and yet we had something like 4 or 5 of these bonus cards in the top half of the deck, which was nice, but we never got to use the bloody things. Or we chose not to.
Before we give too much of the game away on that one, we should shift on, I think.
Yes.
Suffice to say, we at least played 1 game and we have progressed it. We are now into another month.
October, hurrah!
October, we only have another 3 to 6 games to do.
Yeah.
It's going to be 6,
so
isn't it,
6 games then, yes.
Oh dear.
So I think there's a lesson out there. If anyone at the UN is listening to this podcast, don't employ me, Steve, or John to manage international affairs or crises, because everyone will be dead.
So, we've actually been playing some more games, haven't we? In fact, this weekend we have successfully played a lovely game of Lords of Waterdeep.
Indeed.
We have. And I don't think we've ever talked about this on the podcast before, have we?
Possibly not. So, Steve, you, I, and Amanda have played this several times together, but I think this was your first go at it, wasn't it, Andy?
Yes, it was. I bought it a while ago now. It sat on my shelf of shame, as have many other games. But I thought, well, I've heard nothing but good reviews about it. So I thought, and I like worker placement. So I thought, well, and I like Dungeons and Dragons. So that's kind of pretty much automatic buy, really. So I bought it, and obviously the expansion, because I have issues.
Completion problems.
So Steve, having played it before, took us through the rules, which are fairly straightforward, to be honest. We chucked in the Skullport expansion just to make it a bit tasty, and went through, and I have to say, all the people around the table rather enjoyed it. And in true worker placement style, I came last. Of course I did.
Yeah, but why did you come last, Andy?
Because of reasons.
Because Andy was the most corrupt character in the game.
Possibly, yes. But that's because I had Xanathar. I'm supposed to be corrupt. Unfortunately, I think that card is slightly flawed.
Possibly.
I did think of a strategy for it, but I think it's quite a hard strategy to implement. Because essentially, Xanathar's Lord power is essentially to make any corruption token worth 4 victory points. Whereas the corruption tokens vary in value with the Skullport expansion to between a minimum of -1 and a maximum of -9. But the +4 from Xanathar essentially offsets that. So the object really for Xanathar, for anyone playing this card, is essentially try to keep the corruption track at around about -4, -5. That way, everyone else suffers sort of -5 points per corruption token, and Xanathar would only suffer -1. Or less, obviously, if the corruption track's not that high up. But the problem is, you have no control over every other player who's got corruption and is either giving it back or keeping it. So, because everyone's trying to sort of give it back, which is fine, but I don't want the corruption track to be on 0, because that means that, well, I guess I do, in a way. But you need some corruption tokens in order to make my score +4 per token. Otherwise, it's worthless if I don't have any. And every other lord is worth +4 points for basically completing quests most of the time. And as you go through the game, you complete those quests. So, I don't know, it just felt that the Xanathar card is a lot harder to manage than, say, a lot of the other cards, which are just, do quest, get 4 points.
Yeah. So the overall aim of the game is basically to accrue victory points. And to do that, you generally complete these little quests, which will need bunches of cubes and money. And to acquire those, you have to place your workers on various spots around the board.
It's a very fundamentally simple worker placement as well, really, isn't it? You place workers, you get some cubes, you cash those cubes into cashing quests.
Yeah. And there's some intrigue cards as well that allow you to do some different little manoeuvres that allow you some sort of special abilities for one-off sort of things. There's some spaces
and some dick moves.
Yeah, and then you get to
dick moves.
Then you get to place your meeple a second time if you do the intrigue things. You can also build some buildings, and if anyone visits a building that you've built, you get some sort of bonus as well as them getting something for visiting it.
Building is what keeps that game really interesting, I think, because every time you play, you will get different sets of buildings come out, because it's a big stack of building cards, and they're random for every game. So I think the buildings are what keep Lords of Waterdeep quite interesting.
Definitely. A worker placement game isn't necessarily the sort of game that I would instinctively go to first of all, but I do, every time I've played that game, I've really enjoyed it. It helps that I won this time as well, but...
I'm interested, what are your thoughts, Andy? Because, I like Lords of Waterdeep, and I've liked it for some time, and it's probably actually the first worker placement game I both played and owned.
Yes.
And I only bought it because it was called Lords of Waterdeep, and I'd heard some good reviews. I had no idea kind of what it was about. Now, I thoroughly enjoy it, but I've seen a lot of people diss on this game. They reckon the theme's paper thin, and they reckon it's too straightforward of a worker placement game. Now, you, as our resident worker placement game correspondent, what are your thoughts? We now go out to the field where Mr. Lewis is standing outside a wooden meeple factory.
Here is a man with gravy stains on his lapels. Now you've mentioned that criticism of it, it's interesting because I was going through my head just as you were talking and I thought, it isn't particularly complicated. I mean, certainly nowhere near as complicated as stuff like Ave Roma or Solkin or Anachrony, which are, super turvy heavyweight Euros. Obviously, it's not designed to be. Having played other heavyweight Euros, it does feel a bit simple. It's not bad, though. It's still enjoyable. It was easy to pick up because, having played all of these heavy Euros, it's like, I'll just put open the board up and go, okay, their worker placement spots, buy buildings, add the board up, get resource, complete quest, job done. I'd almost kind of work the rules out without even going through the rule book. The only thing I needed to understand was how to set the damn thing up in the first place. That was it. Which I think is not a bad thing, of course. This is still kind of baby's first worker placement, really. I have to agree that the theme, whilst nice, and obviously I do like D&D, is kind of token.
I think one of the worst things it did was make the resource tokens cubes.
Yes.
I know it's a very Euro thing to do, but there's 4 resources and they are supposed to be fighters, rogues, clerics, and wizards. But what they actually are is orange cubes, black cubes, white cubes, and purple cubes.
And that's what everyone remembers them as.
And everyone says, right, I need 4 purple cubes for this quest, or I'm going to go there and grab 2 orange cubes. I try and say, all right, I want to get 2 fighters and 2 rogues, but even I fall into I'm going to get 2 orange cubes and 2 black cubes.
Yeah. I can remember clerics and wizards. I can never remember the other 2. Purple and white, they make sense. Orange and black.
What's black for rogues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, the orange is because they're all like super buff and tanned.
Adonis. They are Adonises. I don't know. I liked it, don't get me wrong, and I would absolutely play it again. Because it is straightforward and you can get into it quickly. You don't have to spend a week explaining the rules, which obviously for my heavy Euro love is a point against it, obviously. But it was fun, it was enjoyable. I can see the criticisms and I kind of agree with them. The theme could be probably completely reskinned with another setting and it would be exactly the same. There isn't, that I can think of, any real link between the theme and the mechanics, which breaks one of the cardinal sins of our, super duper top notch game sins. Clans of Caledonia, for example, that had, it was a nice game, it worked really well mechanically, but the theme was almost completely disconnected. So, it worked fine, it was an enjoyable game, but that link for me just doesn't exist, which kind of relegates it down to a sort of 7 out of 10 game rather than an 8, 9 or 10 out of 10 game. In terms of worker placement.
I disagree on that last point. I think the theme does link. You're right, it could be reskinned, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad game. It's
not a bad game.
The things that break it when you get that it could be reskinned as anything is when the theme doesn't even fit the mechanics that you're doing. But you are hiring wizards and mages and things, and if you're looking at the cards and what they're actually saying on them, they do fit. It'll be like knocking over someone's shop or performing some sort of magical quest or something like that. So it ties together, I think.
That's not a link with the mechanics, though, John. That's just story and fluff. What I mean is, like, for example, in Crisis, which I don't think you've played, the game is about recovering the economy it's essentially Greece, but it's not called Greece. And the idea is that you're playing as semi-cooperative with other players, and everyone's trying to sort of contribute towards the economy by maintaining and buying local national companies. And you're using local labour. However, some of the mechanics in the game allow you to import goods and labour. And if you do that, you actually destabilise the economy. So in performing an action, one of the mechanics links to the theme of the game, which is to build the economy, i.e. acting in the game kind of links with the theme of the game. rather nicely. Whereas in Waterdeep, whilst you're saying, okay, I've sent 6 wizards and a cleric off on a quest, it sounds very nice, but ultimately you're not actually doing anything with those mechanics. All you're doing is putting a dude down and sticking a bunch of cubes on a card. There's nothing that really affects the theme of the game. That makes sense? No, the look on your face suggests no.
I know what you're getting at, Andy, and I do agree with you. I love Lords of Waterdeep. It's probably one of my favourite games. I've played it a hell of a lot of times, but I'm not going to lie and go it's got a perfectly integrated theme and mechanics. It isn't. It can be. It could be stuck together with something else. I think they've improved on that with the expansion. I think Skullport.
I did like that. The corruption links it. That is a nice link to actually the mechanics, because the theme and the mechanics are integrated there with the corruption. So that does work.
Yeah.
Quite nicely. So there's a good example. So yeah, the base game, probably not. Definitely Skullport. I haven't played Undermountain. I don't know what that's like.
Undermountain is more like more stuff for the base game.
Right, okay.
So it doesn't it doesn't introduce any new mechanics. It just adds more places you can go and mixes up the quests and mixes up the intrigue cards.
Right, okay.
They got a different flavour to them, but it doesn't change the mechanics of the game.
Okay. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a good game. I'd happily play it again, and I will. So yeah, definitely a good game, despite the lack of link.
If you are a Forgotten Realms Dungeons & Dragons fan, there are so many nods in there as well. So many of the big characters from D&D turn up as just a picture or a brief name, As you said, you mentioned Xanathar earlier. Xanathar turns up in like 6 or 7 places in that game.
Yes.
Who else doesn't want to domesticate the owlbears?
Exactly. So, yeah, the theme is very, very well done. There's a very loose link in Skullport to the mechanics, which is better. But yeah, no, it's good. I enjoyed it. I would definitely play it again.
It did entertain me that I got, is it Mirth the Moneylender?
Yeah.
It just happens to be part of the backstory for my character in D&D. Yeah. So like you say, there are a number of characters that do crop up in there. So there you go. That's Lords of Waterdeep, which is fun. We recommend it.
A game we really like.
Yep.
Yes.
So, Lords of Waterdeep is quite an old game.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think it came out about 5 or 6 years ago. And because we are a hip and cutting edge, on the absolute bleeding edge of gaming, I've also been playing a game from about 5 years ago.
Sometimes it's good to revisit.
So what you're saying is we're on the cutting edge of obsolete technology.
Actually, that's even more appropriate when I tell you what game I'm playing. So, I've started playing a lot more Netrunner all of a sudden.
Oh.
And anyone who follows Netrunner will understand the unintentional joke that you've just made, because FFG announced recently they are cancelling Netrunner.
Hey, really?
So I am quite literally playing an obsolete game soon.
Wow.
Well, what that's happened is there seems to have been some issue with the rights.
Okay.
So Netrunner is actually originally a 90s card game.
Right.
God, is it that old? Jesus.
Yeah, I remember reading a review of that game in Arcane magazine. And the fact that I bought that magazine from the newsagent in Caergurley in North Wales means that I don't think I've been to Caergurley in about 20 years.
That's quite telling, isn't it?
So, it was originally released by Wizards of the Coast. So, the original game, Netrunner, was designed by Richard Garfield, who also designed Magic the Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And it came along, it died, just like most card games like this do. And then FFG brought it back 5 or 6 years ago as Android Netrunner.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's when they started putting games in their Android universe, as it were, because before then it was just Android was the only game. So they started putting out these other games which use the same setting.
Right.
And the story is that Wizards of the Coast are taking back the Netrunner license.
Taking back their country.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
That suggests that Wizards of the Coast will be making a new version of Netrunner sometime in the future then.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Well, it won't be Android Netrunner, so all the names of everything will be different.
Right.
And the artwork will be different. And there is a worry that it's going to be because Wizards of the Coast, of course, make Magic the Gathering. There is a worry that it's going to become a a CCG, so randomized booster packs kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
So is this another opportunity for people to throw their cards in a fire in disgust because they have shutting down?
If they want to do that, I can burn them for you.
Yeah.
If you're going to throw away your Android Netrunner cards in disgust, then just post them to me and I will dispose of them in a safe, hazard-free way by putting them in a box with the rest of my cards.
Compliance with the Rojas legislation and all the Wii rules. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So, yeah, because Adam has bought the campaign box, our friend Adam, who was in our D&D group, we have started playing again. So what we've done is we just started off by actually going back to the original game and playing a few games, and I forgot just how good Android Netrunner is.
It is one of the few card games I actually quite like.
I think I played it against you once or maybe twice, Steve, and I do seem to remember, as you did, enjoying it rather a lot.
To jog your memory, and just in case someone else out there doesn't know what it is, it's a asymmetric card game. So it's your typical kind of card game, as that's a weird way of saying it, but your collectible, tradable card game, living card game, in which you build a deck between games and bring that deck with you. It's asymmetric because rather than like Magic the Gathering, where you could both be playing the game with exactly the same deck if you want, both decks work completely opposite in this game. So you have a runner, which is a hacker in the original version, and you have the corporation. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do is the corporation is trying to score these agenda cards, which basically means they install them and then power them up over time. And then the runner is just trying to steal these cards off the other player. And the basic way in which the game works is the runner, the hacker player, has several different columns they can do hacks upon, and the corporation will reveal ice. So, firewalls, basically, and then the hacker has to use the hacker ability he's got, which generally means spending credits to get through these subroutines and hopefully get to what's behind all this ice.
Get to the good stuff.
If the corporation player is playing it really well, then there's a good amount of bluffing going on, so there might not actually be an agenda behind all that security. There might be a bomb, or there might be nothing, or the agenda which you need to score is the one that's actually unprotected out on the right-hand side that you could have just grabbed with no effort.
Yeah, a lot of sneakiness potential in there.
I have to admit, when I've played it now, I think it's twice, and I have enjoyed it both times because it is, you can bluff, double bluff, counter move. Obviously, it's very much dependent on what you've got in your deck, but I did like that aspect of it. So it is quite a good game, and obviously, it's kind of gone completionist ways because I've got it now as part of the 5 Android games that FFG have released. So that's one of the reasons.
I didn't realise you owned it.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I got it second hand.
How much of it do you own?
The base box, 2 of the larger expansions. I can't remember what they're called. And a couple of little expansions. But I honestly couldn't tell you what they are. So I've got, I don't know, it must be a couple of 100 cards.
So you don't own it all? Ooh,
no, I don't.
That must be irksome.
It is a little, yes, be quiet. Yes, it is, but at the same time, it's kind of
back of his head.
Yeah, I have considered that.
What's that twitch in your eye there, Andy?
Shut up. It is a little. I did consider trying to find all of the others, but they're quite old and quite rare to find because all of the Netrunner players basically keep their expansions. So I thought, I don't actually play it that often.
No, I'm playing it at the moment, and I'm looking at it because I never bought any expansions for it. I think I bought 1 data pack, which is the smaller ones, and I'm looking at maybe getting a couple of the big expansions, and that's it, really. I'm not going to go crazy with it. It's just because it's a very big rabbit hole to fall down if you do that with an LCG.
Yeah, that's exactly why I've not done it.
It's expensive quick.
Yes, it's the same reason I've not started Magic the Gathering. Although again, card game, not that bothered. So, but again, it's one of these. It's why another reason I've not started 40k again. It's just a rabbit hole that you will never, ever, ever get out of again.
Some rabbit holes are really interesting, though.
Shush you.
Oh, you mentioned 40k. Every time I look at something to do with 40k, I'm like, ooh.
Tempting.
Hello. Yeah, it does look. I mean, the miniatures do look nice.
The new Age of Sigmar stuff as well. I keep looking at it going, ooh.
I keep hearing Secret Cabal, and they keep going on about Age of Sigmar. In fact, they did an Age of Sigmar special recently, and after that episode, I was like, Google. Ooh. But I haven't committed. So
No. The fact that we still need to play Infinity a few more times, it's like, let's just leave it at that. Let's just leave it at Infinity.
Yep.
That does mean I need to start building some scenery for that, though.
Yes, I've got a little bit.
Yeah? Oh, cool.
Left over from 40k.
So yes, I'm playing it again. I thoroughly enjoy this game, Netrunner, Android Netrunner, and I am now starting to look into customizing decks, which is usually means sitting in the middle of a living room floor with cards splayed out everywhere around you.
Excellent. Yeah, it is. It must take quite a while to build a deck in Netrunner.
Yeah, at the moment I'm net decking it a bit. So I've made a deck based off the starter set that was online, and I'm just tweaking it from there, basically.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Totally. From almost predictable information in your own deck to absolutely unpredictable information. A few weeks ago, I ended up playing with Alora and a couple of our friends in Wolverhampton, The Thing, the board game. Yeah, so based on the 1980s cult film, based in Antarctica, where an alien sort of turns up, infects people, makes them a bit doolally, and tries to sort of take over the world. The idea of The Thing is kind of a cross between something like Resistance, which is quite a simple hidden information game, where everyone knows what side they're on, and also a little bit of... What's the best sort of comparison? Essentially, there's a bunch of stuff on the board. So a bunch of rooms in the base you're in. And it's essentially in 3 sections. So in the first part of the game, you're running around just the first section. In the second part, you're running around just the second section. And then you get to the third section. And the idea is you're supposed to get a flamethrower and a couple of other bits of kit, and then try to escape the base in the helicopter. That's the idea. Simple. And the game supports... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, simples. And the... game supports between, I think it's 4 and 8. It might be less than 4, but we played it with 4. And the idea is that you essentially go on missions, as you do in something like Resistance, where the leader says, right, I want you 3 or whatever it is to come on the mission with me. And from all of that, somebody will turn around and try and dick the party over or not, in the same way that you vote in, say, Battlestar or Dead of Winter, that everyone sort of contributes to a deck to try and pass this mission. And obviously that's the alien players or the infected players' chance to screw everybody over, or not. So that works kind of well, very well. Everyone sort of says, right, we're going to move into this room, but then there are different effects that can kick off, like you can, the room might end up burning, at which point you've got to fight a fire in there. So if there's anyone left who doesn't go on a mission, you can use those players to do other things around the base to try and, fight fire or try and capture a beastie or whatever. If everyone goes on the mission, then obviously you can't. So there's only a certain number of things that can happen. If bad stuff happens, you end up fighting either a small infected thing or you get a fire. The base gets worse. You basically go up this panic track, and if you get to the end of the track, everybody loses. So it's a very simple idea. And it was quite good fun. So it was kind of like Resistance Plus, and the Plus worked quite well. It was very thematic, great fun, very, very close to the film, and every now and again you could perform a blood test on players. So we have a nice link to the theme and the mechanics there, because in the film, I don't know if you must have seen it, everybody in the base is subject to a blood test. Yep. You put a little bit of blood in a petri dish, and you apply a sort of a hot nail to that blood, and if it's an infected blood sample, the thing alien basically jumps out and starts squealing. Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you. The sound effects department there, sparing no expense. And
do you know what? I'm going to post edit that now with the actual sound from the film.
We'll do you last.
And you basically go through that, you complete a bunch of missions, you grab kit. Once you've got the certain kit that you need and you have fought an alien, you then move to the second section and then essentially rinse and repeat 3 times until either everybody dies or everybody loses or everyone escapes, or even at least somebody escapes. And of course, the alien player, the infected player, is essentially trying to get onto the helicopter again at the end of the game so that they can escape and infect the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a simple premise. I don't think it works with 4.
No, I can understand that.
As in it's too few or too many?
It's too few. It needs 8. It's like Battlestar. It can support 4, but it really needs 6. I think the thing really needs 8, at least 6, but probably 8, because a lot of the missions we were playing required at least 3 or 4 players. So everybody was involved. So there was no real doubt about, it was less opportunity for the infected player to try and screw with things. So if they weren't in the deck, for example, on a 5-player mission and only 3 people went, there's obviously a lot more doubt that people have got to work out around somebody knackers the deck or not. So it's a lot harder to work out who's infected and who's not. Whereas in a 4-player game, it turns out I was the infected person. Ho, ho, ho. And I won. Lol. Basically, everybody died and I destroyed the base. Win. But I found it extremely difficult to monkey with the deck. I had to play it very, very, very carefully and just take opportunities as they arose, which I suppose is part of the fun, but I don't think there was enough suspicion or enough... I was going to say, how's your father? Interplay, yes, thank you.
How's your father? Is it another one of those games that suffers from being much easier to corrupt things versus keeping it on the straight and narrow?
In what sense?
So I often find with those kind of hidden traitor type games, like in Battlestar Galactica, it's almost, in my experience, it generally tends to be the Cylons that win. Like, it always seems to be easier to sabotage things than it does to keep things going straight.
I would say Battlestar Galactica, there's even a point, I think, in Battlestar Galactica where you could probably not do anything as a Cylon and you'd still win.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a rumour, I don't know if this happened, but I remember reading a story of someone who forgot to deal Cylon cards into the deck, so they played the entire game of Battlestar Galactica without any Cylon cards. So the suspicion was through the roof because no one knew who a Cylon was.
Brilliant.
And they
That's
still
amazing.
lost.
That's actually quite funny.
I mean, I'm tempted to do that just to be just screw around with people sometimes.
Like that time I bought a whiskey for Sid and it might have been you, Andy, and because you guys have been harping on about how like just a drop of water could change the flavour incredibly, and you were really up on your whiskies and you could tell whatever whiskey it was and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, right, I'll go and get you a surprise whiskey and you guys have to guess what it is. So I went and got them a Bell's.
I wasn't there. That was Sid.
It was Sid and someone else. There was 2 people.
It was Sid and it was Sid and Andy, not me. Different Andy Mitchell.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
It was
I did
brilliant.
hear about it though. Yeah.
They went on for ages, like all the different subtleties. Oh, could it be a Bowmore? Oh no, it's not salty enough for a Bowmore. So go on then. What was it? It's a Bell's. Pause. Please don't kill me.
So, could you corrupt the game? Well, no, actually, because if you get revealed too soon or too easily, there are weapons and stuff where people can basically just set you on fire and kick you out. So you'll be identified and you'd lose as the infected player. So you can't really... Well, with the 4-player count, certainly. It might be different later on because there are more players and there's more chance for more people to be infected, so you get more than one.
Yeah,
so they can sort of interplay and play off each other. So again, I think another reason to play it with a lot more players. But it was fun. It was quite simple. It wasn't particularly difficult at all. There's miniatures in there. The miniatures are nice. You get Kurt Russell and all that lot in there. They're not really necessary. And to be honest, the board's not really necessary. It just adds a little bit of... In fact, it was almost as if... it's a cross between Resistance and Grim Forest. I think that's probably...
Okay, that's not selling it well, mate.
No, not in the sense that it's more like Resistance in terms of gameplay.
Right.
But when in Grim Forest, where you stick miniatures on the area that you want to go in, and then you can bring in the big bad wolf, and they just sort of sit there looking pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that. So you basically move the miniatures to a room, and then once everyone's done the mission, they go out again, and that's it. The miniatures play almost no part in actually what happens. It's just to symbolise where they are. That's it. So it could be tokens, it could be anything. It could just be we're going to this room, play a card, and that's it. So it works, it's nice, it looks good. You're running around a base, you can think, okay, we can go to these rooms and so on and so forth. But do they actually serve any real purpose? No, they don't.
But it's superfluous counters.
But they do look nice. And the game isn't particularly expensive, so it's not as if it's a 60 quid job. So you don't feel overly ripped off, I don't think.
Yeah, okay.
Is it worth getting though? If you got Resistance or Battlestar Galactica, does it feel different enough or have enough of a niche it's worth getting? Because the way you describe it at the moment, because I quite like the thing, I'm a bit of a fan of the film.
Yeah.
I didn't even mind the sequel.
There was a sequel?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Oh, wow.
I can't remember when it came out now. I think it might be on Netflix or Amazon at the moment. It must be Netflix.
Right, okay.
The problem is it's a sequel, which is effectively just a remake.
Oh, they kind of did what they did with The Evil Dead. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a sequel because it references the first film, but it's more or less exactly the same story.
Film. Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it worth getting if you've got either BSG or Resistance? Yeah, I think so. Because there's not as much to it to make it as complicated as Battlestar, but there's more to it than there is to Resistance.
Okay.
So it kind of fills the gap in between them.
Yeah, I'd say so, because players can be proactive in trying to hunt down the infected players, whereas in Resistance you can't be.
Yes.
There's no proactive, right, we are going to set fire to it with a flamethrower, or we're going to force people to do a blood test, which you can't do that in Resistance. Whereas in Battlestar, obviously you can be proactive, but Battlestar is a lot heavier. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more actions that people take. There's a lot more discussion. You can trade cards, all this sort of stuff. So it's not as heavy as Battlestar, but I think there's more to it than Resistance. So yeah, I think it fills the niche quite well, to be fair.
Well, I think we're going to be quite short and sweet today.
I'm always short and sweet. Oh.
Trying to think how I could make that into a joke about John's height, but
He beat you to it.
I couldn't. He beat me to it. So yeah, if he's going to do it himself, well, there we go. So thank you very much for listening. We do have a kind of more complicated schedule over the next few weeks.
Yep, it's holiday season.
It's holiday season, so we're not going to be podcasting. So it's going to be probably about 3 or 4 weeks until we podcast again. So I know we mentioned Gen Con at the beginning of the episode. Well, it's going to be well after Gen Con, which means all our thoughts about Gen Con will be well out of date and as irrelevant as usual.
At least we're consistent.
Yeah, yes, true. One thing we have been doing, which we did kind of have been doing since we last podcasted, is we have been Twitch streaming our Dungeons and Dragons games.
Yes.
Mr. Cage should be given a pat on the back because he's the person who's been doing all this, and I would have no idea how to do what he's been doing, and it looks awesome. It
really does. John has outdone himself, really. It looks fabulous. It almost looks professional.
Almost.
Almost.
Apart from when I unplugged the headphones to my machine halfway through a stream and then discovered that's the only sound output for all the guys, and then had to hurriedly run around like, well, how the fuck do I get it back? Just plug them back in? Okay, and we're good. Oops.
So they stay on Twitch for how long?
Not a massive amount of time.
It's like 2 weeks, is it?
Something like that, yeah. So I have been either recording them locally or downloading them afterwards. And the plan is to get them all up on YouTube. That will definitely happen. Yeah. I just need to have a fiddle with some editing software first.
So when we've been streaming kind of our regular sessions at the moment. So because of course I stupidly decided to run 2 sessions at the same time.
I think you mean brilliantly.
So we have John's group, which is the Champions of Chance, who are 1 week, and then Andy's group, which what was the latest name you came up? I mean, we call them Team Frosty Balls because they're up in the Icewind Dale. But what was the last name you came up with?
The Masters of Fate.
The Masters of Fate, that was it.
Which suits Arrakis rather well, because especially in the Master department, you will do as I tell you, mortals.
So what we're doing at the moment is we're streaming one group every other week. But again, we're going to have a bit of disruption of that as everyone goes on holiday over the next few weeks. Mm-hmm. But from about mid-August onwards, we should be back on it, I think.
Yep.
And we will be streaming, it's Thursday evenings about somewhere between 7 and 7:30 UK time.
Typically 7:30. That's when it normally kicks
Typically
off.
7:30, yeah. I don't know what that is of the world times, but it's whatever time it is in the UK on that day. We're not GMT at the moment, are we?
Yeah, it's 7:30 BST.
BST,
currently.
Right.
British Summer Time.
Currently.
So we are on twitch.tv/Polyhedron Collider.
Indeed. And it will be coming to YouTube soon, so you can catch up on the backlog.
Yes.
Cool.
So, other than that, it's time for us to do our usual blurb of begging you to like us on Facebook, on Twitter, and giving us a outstanding review on iTunes.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
We all know only the 5-star button works. All the rest of them don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to chat to us, we are on Facebook. We are on the BGG Guild 2726, but we are also on Twitter at Polyhedron C. I am at Wahofel Madenga.
I am at Sonic H with a 0.
And I'm at John_Cage.
But for now, tatty bye and happy board gaming.
Take it easy, folks.
Catch you later. It is about 35 degrees in this room. I'm absolutely melting.